Hello everyone. Welcome to the July 23rd String Along Quilt Guild meeting. We're not filming this live, so we're taping this ahead of time. But Bonnie couldn't be here today, so she's asked me to fill in for her and welcome everybody. My name is Joan Crookston, in case you don't know who I am. I own Sweet Stitches Quilt Shop in Chesterton, and I've been a member of the Guild since 2005. Bonnie and Sally, who's the vice president of the Guild, asked me to put together a little sew-along for our members for the summer. So I put together something quick and simple that everyone, whether you're a beginner or whether you're an experienced quilter, you can do this quilt. It's really going to be easy because it's one block that we're going to split up into two parts. And so you'll have cutting instructions and assembly instructions. Those are going to be in the newsletter. I'm going to be giving those over to Flo so that she can have them in there for you. So when you get your newsletter, you'll have instructions for cutting the quilt block out, or all the pieces to the quilt block, and then I have you pile them up into different piles, and you'll be ready to sew when we get back together on August 27th here. So, like I said, it's a one block that we're going to split into two parts, and what you're going to need is I guess first I should say that the block is going to be 12 inches finished, and so I have a 6 across and 7 down blocks, so that's 42 blocks that will be in the quilt. This will be a twin size quilt when we get done with it. The quilt doesn't have any borders on it because we're keeping it simple, but if you choose to want to put borders on it, you go for it. I'm just going to be using leftover fabrics and put a colorful binding around mine. It's almost completed. So let's start with telling you about the quilt block. It's very simple. It's made up of squares and rectangles. There's no triangles, there's no half square triangles that you have to try and deal with. Like I said, we're trying to keep it simple for summer because we know a lot of you are busy doing yard work or gardening, or maybe you're traveling, who knows. But what we're going to do is we're going to, like I said, break it up into two parts, and we're going to make 42 quilt blocks. And what you're going to need for it is a light background, and you can see here on the table I have my colors that I've chosen for my quilt, which are white grunge fabric is my background fabric, and then my medium colors are the pink through coral through orange that you see here, and then my dark colors are going to be the turquoise, the lime greens, and the aquas. So you're going to need a light, a medium, and a dark fabric. And so for the light background fabric, you're going to need 3 1/4 yards of fabric. That's 3 1/4 yards of fabric. And for the medium, you're going to need 6 different fabrics, a third of each, 1/3 of a yard of each of the medium colored fabrics. And then for the dark fabrics, you need 6 half-yard cuts of a dark fabric. And so you don't have to do what I did here. Here I went with kind of a tropical kind of summery theme. This quilt lends itself to all different kinds of color schemes. Red, white, and blue. You could do Christmas, red, green, and white. Or you could do Halloween. It's, you know, orange and green and purple. you know, the choice is up to you, and maybe you have fabrics in your stash that you might have enough of for all these, for the yardage requirements. Go ahead and use those with a light background. You might even want to change up the light background and maybe use black with bright colors on top of the black, or maybe even a black, white, and gray. You know, your choices are pretty much endless. I find it really helpful to use a color wheel when choosing the fabrics. And what I did for the colors that I chose warm colors and cool colors. And they'll be separated by the white in the middle. And I don't think I'm giving too much away by saying that, because this is sort of a mystery quilt too, because you're not going to know what it looks like until the end. But a color wheel can really help you choose colors. So what I did is I chose all the warm colors on this half of the, so that's where I can get my warm colors in the corals, oranges, and pinks. And then I got my cool colors on this side of the color wheel, and those are my turquoise, my aqua, and my lime green. And then the white, of course, is just there to kind of break up the background. So let's see. Cutting instructions. So I'm not going to tell you cutting instructions over the video here. Those are going to be in the newsletter, and I will be giving those to Flo so that you can get started on cutting up all your fabrics. But for right now, you can at least gather your fabrics and get them ready and kind of think about what your color scheme is going to be. Of course, this costs nothing. You know, you could use, you know, the Guild is not charging anything for this. You can use, you know, fabrics from your stash, or I know a place that has a few fabrics in it if you needed to buy a little bit more to add to your collection. If anybody is interested in doing the color scheme that I chose, I will have kits available. You will need to call me up at the shop to reserve a kit. I'm not going to cut them ahead of time just because I don't want to cut too many and, you know, everyone chooses a different color scheme. So like I said, this can be done in any color scheme that you'd want. It would make a really great Quilt of Valor quilt if you want to work on something for Quilts of Valor too, which is always a good cause. So our next meeting, and maybe let's say, let me repeat those yardages again, you know, just in case you didn't have a paper and pencil handy. But for the light background, you're going to need 3 1/4 yards. For the medium fabric, which is my warm colors here, those are 6 1/3 cuts. So 1/3 of a yard, you need 6 of them. And then for the dark fabrics, which are my blues and greens, that is, you need 6 half-yard cuts of those. And the reason why there's more of the dark color than there is of the medium color is because I chose, that's what I'm going to use for my binding. So I'm going to use all these different colors. Whatever my leftover strips that I have, that's going to be my binding for the quilt too. So that's why we kind of need half-yard cuts. If you think you're not going to do a multicolored binding, you could probably get away with, I'm going to say 14 inches wide fabric, you know, by width of fabric for the dark colors. So trying to think of what else I have to say. Oh, so our next meeting, or the next time you'll see me on the video here, it will be August 27th. And I'll have part 1 of the block that we're going to do. And so I will actually tell you the sizes of the pieces that you need to gather together to sew the first 42, let's see, 84 blocks, because you're going to need 2 of them for each of the quilts that, or you're going to need 2 for each of the blocks that we're making. So it'll be explained a little bit better in the newsletter. You all know how much I love being on video, so I'm not as calm about it as Bonnie is. But our next one will be August 27th, and that'll be the first clue that you get for sewing the quilt together. And then September 24th, we'll do part 2. And what we'll also do is I'll show you how to put part 2 and part 1 together. And then probably even reveal what my quilt looks like and how I laid out the blocks. So you can get an idea of how maybe you want to arrange your blocks. Let's see. I don't have any other guild news for you, other than make sure that you're keeping Bonnie in your thoughts. I want to thank her and Sally for asking me to do this little sew along. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And if you have any questions, of course, you can come into the shop and see me, or give the shop a call. You can even email me at info@sweetstitchesquiltshop.com. And that's pretty much it for our video tonight. Have a wonderful night, and I'll see you again in August, if not before.